Good evening and welcome to episode 5 of The Islanders. We are live on the Thames Festival website, Facebook and YouTube channel. When you ask people from the Royal Docks about their favorite memory or most special memory of living in the Royal Docks or growing up in the Royal Docks, I think on average it takes about 20 seconds for anybody from the Royal Docks to bring up the Ferry Festival. It's one of the first things anybody who grew up or lived in the area, especially in the 70s and the 80s, would mention. And I think that gives you an idea of how important it was for the community, how much the festival meant for everybody in the island community of North Woolwich and Silvertown. It was a huge success. It saw thousands of people coming from all around London to North Woolwich and Silvertown in the 70s and the 80s. It was, in the words of Colin Grainger, I hope Colin doesn't mind me stealing his work, a festival by the community and for the community. It was the community response to the struggle that they were facing with the closure of the docks. And I think there are actually a lot of lessons that we could learn from the reasons the people in the community, the people in East London, decided to put the most colourful, amazing festival event that the East End has ever seen, precisely during their darkest days. There are a lot of memories to explore. And some of those memories is what we're going to be talking about this evening with the members of the panel, but also with you. So if you are watching this live, I'd love if you could leave a comment this evening with either a question for Colleen, Dionne, Colin Grainger, or Kim, if she can join us again. We seem to have lost one of their guests. She was having last-minute technical problems. But if you don't have a question, I would love if you still could comment with any of your own memories about the festival. If you were in the area in the 70s or the 80s, or if your parents, your grandparents were in the area, anything you have heard about the festival, any story, any memory, do share it with us this evening. Tonight I'm going to do things a bit different. So instead of me giving an introduction about each of the members of the panel, I'm going to let them to tell you what their connection with the island community or the Ferry Festival is. So tonight with us we have Colleen Russel. Colleen, let's begin with you.
Hi. Yes, I was born and bred in North Woolwich and enjoyed all the festivals in the past. And more recently, when they've been revived in the present, I've been to those. My mum was on the founding committee, and each of the founder members took on an area, and Mum and her good friend Eileen Norton did the OAPs. So they worked throughout the year with the old age pensioners to make sure that they were involved and had a good time.
Thank you very much, Colleen. I hope your mum told you a lot of stories, because I'm going to have a lot of questions for you this evening. Dionne.
Oh, hi everyone. Yeah, I was same as Colleen, born and bred in North Woolwich, moved miles away to Silvertown when I got a little bit older. So North Woolwich, Silvertown. Most of my memories involve being at primary school, Story Street Primary School, for the Ferry Festival, all my fondest memories. And yeah, it was a great time. It was a great childhood, really good time to be around, you know. So looking forward to hearing all our stories.
Thank you very much, Dionne. And a man who should need no introduction, but anyway, we'll let himself introduce himself. Colin Grainger, local historian, editor of the local paper, journalist, and what else, Colin? What can we tell about you? Who are you?
I'm going to say exactly the same thing as the other two, and that'll be it. No, I was born and bred in North Woolwich as well. Sorry, I had my head down there. I was just posting to tell everybody we're live.
Thank you.
Yeah, the same as what Colin said. Yes, I was born and bred in the area, and went to every one of the festivals. When the first one started, I'd recently moved out of the area, so it was kind of a bit of a homecoming for me, and put me back in touch with where I grew up, and learned the things we've all learned to live our lives by. As you said already, it did come at a time when the docks had started to be run down, and so it was a kind of way of us. I suppose I've put this crudely before, but everybody said the area had lost its heart, and it was kind of us putting two fingers back up to everybody saying it hadn't, and it just got better each year. And I'm sure we'll talk later about the content of it. And
yeah, actually, that was going to be my first question. But what Colin hasn't answered about, Colin, who are you? Because he's as bright, as smart as he is humble, is that he is actually he's an amazing local historian, Colin Grainger. He is a former editor of the Newham Recorder, so the editor of the main East London paper, of the main paper covering the area. And he is also, Colin Grainger, the author of a beautiful blog called Forgotten Stories. So we are very, very happy to have Colin again with us this evening because of how much knowledge he has of the area, besides his personal connection. And talking about Colin Grainger, it's time for one of Colin's favorite moments of the show, is when I play a little music video with some of the photos we'll be discussing this evening.
Do you remember the Ferry Festival?
Yes, we used to have the Ferry. Fred actually used to run it. Yeah. He was sort of the main instigator from there, and we used to have raffles and that, and really good laughs with the pram race, because I remember once I was in the pram race with a woman round the corner, and I said, we haven't got I can get a pram. She said, you push me. Well, because yeah, all right, well, the wheels fell off this pram. I don't know where she got it. We never even finished the course. We never got to the police station, and we were sitting there watching. But as the police that was in it, because there was a special route where you had to go up, cross the zebra crossings. Well, the police had their own zebra crossing, didn't they? Rolled up. And of course, they're halfway up, because you used to go into every pub and have half a beer. Well, imagine in them days, there was 20 pubs in Woolwich.
So with round one of photos, we are going to explore, as Colin was already touching a moment ago, the reasons why the festival was launched, the historical context of the moment. And what was happening is that the royal docks went from looking like this, like one of the busiest, or the busiest, most thriving systems of enclosed docks in the world, to looking like this. And it was like it had a domino effect. So with the closure of the docks, we have factories closing, shops closing, people were losing their jobs, families were devastated. And well, Colin, what happened then?
It was a backlash against how things were going on, and I'm sure Colin will explain further. But like all good things, the idea surfaced in a pub. And, some locals got together in the Henley, which thank God is still there now, and they'd heard about a similar festival in Poplar, and it literally grew from there. And it was, as I said, completely different to something like the town show, which was officially organised by Newham Council. This, I think I said in the past, it was kind of organised mayhem, but that's probably doing it a disservice. It's something that, like all things, if you're on a parent-teacher association or you're on a church group or whatever, I think the key was that they went into it not really thinking this is not going to happen, this is not going to work. And I had similar experiences with parent-teacher associations personally, that when we got involved, we didn't mind if we failed, because we learned as things happened over the years. And there's all kinds of stories that happened at the time, but it was a way of saying, this is still a great area and we can do things. And it also got people out. The competitions that went on before the actual festival in July really began, I think, in February or March, Colin. That's right, isn't it? There was darts competitions, football matches, cricket matches, and and those finals built up to the day. But I just think it turned into something fantastic pretty quickly, and different things were added over the years. All the local factories and firms got involved, whether it was by donating things, and of course, in my mind, the two best elements that made it such a success was, first of all, the procession, which got everybody out on the streets, then the pram race, and then obviously the thing of beauty in the park, all the things that went on there, And I, as a journalist then, I was looking and thinking, Christ, it's all those years ago, but I was actually nearly 20 then. I know I'm much older now, but it's something that we got involved as the paper, and pretty quickly realised that this was worth giving our official backing to, and so it wasn't just reporting it; it was being a big part of the day, and more people in our teams and our reporters wanted to come along, and basically the rule was, yes, somebody's got to be there to report it, but that probably wouldn't stop you taking part in the pram race and being part of the event. And so we went from using 4 or 5 pictures to probably 12 or 15 every year. And I think, if you just don't mind if I just roll it forward to the last few years, we used some really good pictures. But if you had a pram race or another procession, you pick the key events and use, as newspapers do, here's the winner of so-and-so, here's a couple of action shots. But when I managed to salvage a lot of the recorders' archives from the rubbish tip that they were going to be sent to, we've got all the negatives. Now, thanks to Brian Cook, he turned those negatives into JPEGs. Yes, I've posted a lot of my own pictures, which I've kept over the years, but I think the most fantastic element of it, and the really good side of social media, is we posted 300 pictures of sort of 1 year. So within that lot, there was about perhaps 15 to 20 pictures we might have used, but they were pictures you're picking as an editor or as a news editor or whatever. But to me, the best ones are us rushing past in the pram and just seeing the faces of people standing outside the pubs and the expressions on their fases. And
we've got some of those photos. We'll see them tonight because you sent them to me. Going back to the question I was starting the conversation with, Colin Grainger, we'll talk in more detail about every element of the festival, the pram and the procession. What I would like to go back now is, and Colleen, perhaps you can add a bit more as the daughter of somebody who was involved with the organization. It's about the reasons why. Why was this festival needed at the time it happened?
I think, like Colin said, it was at the time, as everything was beginning to close down, it was felt that the community needed to be lifted. And Mickey Russell certainly was a person who enjoyed a party and a get-together. And I can actually remember
And Colin agrees. we can say you're a smile, Colin. You are agreeing.
I can remember Mum saying one night, right, we've got to have an early dinner because I'm going round the Henley tonight. And we said, midweek, what? And she said, oh, yeah, I'm not going to have a drink. It's just that Mickey Rutter's called a meeting to try and get a few people together because he wants to organise a carnival. And we all said, carnival? What's a carnival? I mean, we just never heard of anything. And she said, well, I'll tell you when I find out. And off she went, just as we thought, just to go to meet. Well, she came back late that night, a few G&Ts in her, and said, yes, it was a good night. That they're planning to do a carnival kind of thing, a bit like the town show, which East Ham always has every year, or Newham town show. And she said that there was a few of us round there, and we certain people have said, yes, I'm going to do the children, I'll do the OAPs, I'll do the beer, I'll do the thing. And it really started from that. And I think that must have been in 1973, because 74 was the first one. So I think it had a year probably to build the committee. But I mean, it just took off. Everybody wanted to help once they'd heard of it. And she went into work the next day and said, oh, you know, me and Eileen are doing this. And then someone else said, oh, well, I know someone who can get some tables. And I know someone who works in Hollis's and can get the wood. And it just went from there, really. And the committee grew. And I think they, you know, in the build up to it, there was parties and dances and fancy dress things just to raise money, because we knew that we would need money for the hiring of certain things. Like the procession always started off with a band, so they needed to be paid and things like that. But no, I mean it was great. But getting back to the carnival effect, I think it probably was because of things dying out and the need to lift the community. But Mick used to work on the boats, and he used to go out of the docks to all sorts of different countries. And we think probably he had experienced a carnival kind of lifestyle in other countries and thought, well, if they can do it, why can't we? And we certainly did, bigger and better than I think anybody ever imagined, really. I mean, it always does. It makes the hairs on my neck rise when I look at those photos. I never tire of looking at them. I can look at them all day long, every day, and I always see something different in the background, or, you know, an old face, and it was just a marvellous time.
Let's have a look at the next round of photos. I guess you might be able to recognize some of the faces.
Uncle Jack there, and Eddie Mooney, and Jimmy Longhair, and I can't see the one at the back, but yeah, I know 3 of those.
And that's the famous pram, which we'll talk a bit more about. But for anybody watching this live, if you see the Henley Arms in the background, that is the pub where the Ferry Festival was born. As Colin Grainger said, it was in this pub that a meeting was held, and people decided that something was needed to lift the community spirit, and the result was the Ferry Festival. That's another photo of, I think, the end of the pram race. I think Colin Grainger is in the middle of this photo with glasses on. I think that's Colin in the middle of the photo. He says yes. I can hear him. He's saying yes. And of course, there were also a lot of activities for children and teenagers. It was not only about entertainment for adults, and a lot of party and drinking. Talking about the youth, Dionne, I'm not sure how old were you in the mid-70s when it all started?
So I was born in 1968. So that picture you just showed of the kids, one of those boys was one of my friends, Paul Hayward. So I think we're the same age. That's it. On the left with his got his arm in a sling. So this was my age group. So this is where my appreciation come. I didn't know what all these guys were doing in the background, organising. All I knew is a pretty exciting time. A few weeks leading up to it, we'd all get excited in school. We'd all hope that you get picked to be on a float, because obviously not everybody got picked. You had to be quite well behaved, which is difficult for me, to be honest. I think I only got picked because someone else dropped out, so I was a naughty child. So what I remember, I didn't have the pain and the struggle like Colin and all the rest. All we got was the pleasure, and it really was. I mean, it had a big adult theme because of the drinking and the pubs and the pram race, but what they did for the kids, it was like Wonderland for us, just for that, that one day. Our area was transformed into, it was like a little Wonderland. So your parents let their hair down, nans and granddads came out, my nan joined in the tug of war, and my uncles, I've got quite a big family, like there was 7 brothers and sisters with my mum. Everybody had come, even if they moved out the area, they'd all come, all join in. I got to go on the floats twice, I think. It was magical. It was it was a real good time to celebrate, and we didn't know what was going on in the background. We just all come and had a jolly up, and I wish it had gone on. I know it's coming back now, it's been brilliant, but I wish it had gone on and on and on a lot longer. I'd like my boys to have grown up and seen and done all that,
I have written down what you just said, Wonderland. I love how you use that word. Yeah, and I can understand why for a child it was Wonderland. If you are watching this live, please do leave a comment and let us know what was the festival for you. What is your memory of the festival? Do you agree with what Colleen and Colin and Dionne are saying? Because I know there's a lot of people watching tonight from the local area. I know for all of you, for a lot of you watching this festival meant a lot. So this is your opportunity to leave a comment, to share those thoughts and memories. And Dionne and everybody, one thing about the festival is that it was not only one day, it was a whole year of activities. So for those who are not very familiar with the structure of the festival, could you explain a bit more about the different activities during the year leading up to the grand finale? Colin Grainger, you're also on mute now if you want to.
Yeah, as I kind of indicated earlier, a lot of the activities were obviously pub-based activities. We had a lot of different games in pubs in those days. As I just left the area, I was kind of on the outside, and for me personally, the festival kind of brought me back in, if you like. But they had pool, darts, snooker, all the games that were in pubs in those days, bar billiards. But then, getting yourself fit, if you like, as well, with football and other outdoor sports. So these started in February or March, and they built up towards, the winners, and there may have been stuff in the week previous to that. So, but the organisation as well, as Colin has already indicated, I think, I'm pretty certain it's true, that when the money was raised and you obviously got beer for the beer tent, it was stored in people's houses who lived across the road, and the same with all the other stuff. I mean, all the pubs were open, but it was just like organising, as we've said, the town show. The town show was a more formal thing, but had a big following. But I know that the committee in the first year thought about 400 people would turn up, and thousands were there, weren't they? And that was, as Dionne said, that was the excitement for it, and it was. Although if you took part in the pram race and actually won it, or kind of in the top 3 or won the best dressed pram competition, it was great. Being part of the procession was great. I mean, that's. I mean, if you'd got anywhere near winning it or had won it in the past, in the following year's procession, you had no chance of winning it because you either got your pram sabotaged or smashed up, or you got covered in crazy foam and what have you as you're walking around the streets. The little video, the little audio that you played earlier with the guy. Yes, I think he exaggerated slightly. It was about 10 or 11 pubs, I think, and Kennard Street Centre as well as it was. And yes, you were only supposed to drink a half pint at each, but probably that had a bit of elasticity to it. So, but it was always, if you had been sitting in the frame and then it was your turn to push, you had to drink. So that made you pretty ill, actually.
Colin, we'll talk about the pram specifically a bit later. So what I wanted to explain to people is all of the other activities that took place during the year leading up to the big finale. So we have, as you mentioned, super pub competition, like sports and darts and pool in the pubs. What else happened during the year besides the pub competition?
Well, the procession, the floats, that was a really big thing for the schools. And I actually was working in Story at that time. So, I saw it from that perspective. And again, that was a year you planned that for the whole year before it. What was the theme for the float was going to be, who was going to be on it. The children would paint and make all the banners and things to go on the float. So that was a big thing. And like Dionne said, it was very much the children. I mean, every child wanted to be on the float. And when you think of it, lorries, no barriers, kids climbing on chairs,
no health and safety,
wood with a bow and arrow, and they could have fallen off onto the road, but there were no. I know.
Sorry.
No, the flow, the preparation for the school was for the children. That was a big build up. They all wanted to do that, and from an adult point of view, like Dionne said, the teachers used to say, well, we're not having Jimmy because there's no way he's going to go on there because he'd be jumping off and things like that. So they listed the children and they knew who was probably going to be on it. But the floats were a great thing as well.
So the preparation, as Colleen said, took quite a while. I know there were things like karate displays that the kids did and dancing displays. So they were rehearsing that at the schools for months before. And obviously, if we had various acts that were all around the park, I mean, it wasn't just rolling down the bank at Royal Victoria Gardens competition, but it was sort of official things. And if you were going to take part in the baby show, or if you were there was another fancy dress competition inside, obviously they were spending months actually making the costumes, weren't they, their parents and the kids together. So and these all grew and different things as the years went by. So it was those were the preparation things that were going on, but both adults and children.
And I guess that if you had this super pub competition through the year where you went to different pubs to play different games, so you went to St. John's, I think it was St. John's when you played football. All of these competitions, sports competitions and games, part of the Ferry Festival meant that you were leaving your house once a week, or at least once a month, and going to the pubs and probably having a drink or having a snack and spending some money. So I think,
more like,
am I correct? Am I correct in thinking one drink or two? Am I correct in thinking that was at a time when things were getting really tough? Was it also a way of helping the local economy, like making people leave the house, go to the pubs, spend a bit of money, meeting with people, giving people something to look forward to?
Yeah, I think very much so. And it was, you said at the beginning, it was by the community for the community.
Well, you wrote that in your beautiful article. I'm just stealing your words because I know you allow me to do it because we're friends.
That would just be repeating what people said to me when I was there at the time, and also in sort of looking back and writing about it since. It did actually, at a time when you were depressed, when you didn't have a job for life anymore, and the community was depressed, it did actually get people, and I mean, I think because we've lived in the area, we're bound to say it's got a special bond. I mean, we know that from our history club, don't we? And from when we see each other, but it did actually get people out of their houses and actually it gave them a target to look forward to. So I think,
Colin, sorry, would it be fair to say though, a large portion of people from North Woolwich didn't need a lot of encouragement to go pub, did they? They didn't.
It wasn't one night a week or once a month. It was probably every night.
You know what I mean? It's just like, I've got to go tonight, love, because we're at the meetings. Come on.
We've got the North Woolwich Tenants Committee meeting on the Ferry Festival. Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
If you held it in the church hall, I don't think anyone would have turned up.
Let's say it gave people an official excuse to do it.
An official excuse, yeah.
And talking about how much work it took to organize the festival, as you all mentioned, like only the float, it was months of working and preparation. I think here I can't read very well because I forgot to wear my lenses today. But I think here we can read a bit the members of the committee: chairman, secretary, treasurer, publicity, sports, site planning, fundraising, a lot of people for fundraising. And it says the members were elected or volunteered. Perhaps Colleen, because your mum was part of the committee. So who was elected, or who was chosen, or who volunteered to be part of the committee? How was the committee organised?
I think originally on that first night, the people who were interested in doing it went along, and I think obviously there someone said, I mean, I think Fred Bowyer said from the beginning, I don't want to be on the committee, I don't want to do anything. So we said that, I think they said, oh, well, you'll sort the beer, Fred, won't you? So that was it. I think Maureen, his wife, was the secretary. And then other people just sort of allocated a topic and said, I'll do, I can do this because I've got, some insight to that. And as I said, Mum and her good friend Eileen Norton did the old age pensioners. One of the things that obviously for old age pensioners, they wasn't going to take part in the pub football or the pub, sports. So Mum and Eileen got together they used to go around to St John's, to the community centre, to the old age people's meetings and said to them, how can you be involved in this? And they said, well, we can't do that, but we would like to give financially. We want to help financially. So Mum used to arrange little day outings, so down to Southend to have fish and chips, or into Epping to a pub for a pub lunch. Nick Nichols, who was the community centre director then, would let them have the minibus for free. So basically, the old age pensioners would go out for the day. For them, they would pay, I don't know, a couple of quid, a fiver at the most. And that went into the Ferry Festival pot, but they had a day out for it. So it was things like that. Everybody was involved in some way, but everybody enjoyed what they was doing. So it was a day out for the old people, but they were giving a little bit of money to have for the pleasure, really, which all was all needed. As I said, to pay for the, they had a piper at the beginning or a band or whatever. They had to have money for. I don't know if they had to hire the park. Did they, Colin? Did they used to have to pay the council for the hire of the park?
I don't know, actually.
Possibly.
I can't remember when the GLC let it go and the council took it over. I know towards the end, one of the reasons that it came to an end was because, as you've said, they didn't want... I don't remember any year where there was anybody getting hurt by running in front of a pram. But they said you'd have to spend thousands of pounds on putting barriers up. Slightly odd for me, because towards the end of the Ferry Festival, we were starting to get involved with our kids' PTA in Romford. And I would say probably 6 or 7 years after that, we had kids on floats with no barriers on. So I'm because I think the councils thought differently, you know. But yeah, I mean, that's one thing I don't know for sure whether they did charge the use of the pub.
They certainly needed money for lots of things.
Yeah. And as you say, that was another way of getting people out meeting each other, wasn't it?
I mean, we had dances every Saturday night in the, you know,
fundraising dances
or wherever. You just bought your ticket, a couple of quid, and everybody had a good night out, and the money went in the Ferry Festival pot. I can't remember who the treasurer was. It is.
I mean, to be honest, that's one of the ways that I sort of learned how to fundraise properly, because, you know, when we got involved in the PTA, they sort of asked the people who were just about to leave, how did you rail? Oh, well, they give us a ticket at the door and we sell them a raffle ticket. But I knew the way to do it was to take their ticket, but wait until they'd had a few drinks and then sell them a $5 worth of raffle ticket. And
that is a very smart
nowadays, isn't it? You know?
I've got the next round of photos, which I'm about to show, are of the beautiful floats, and that shows how much money was needed, because you need money to build those beautiful floats. Before we go more into detail in the money, I would like to listen to another sound clip that explains how much work also was needed from everybody who was in the committee. And not everybody sometimes realized how much work behind the scenes the people organizing the festival were doing.
And that went on for quite a few years, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Must have been about 5 or 6 years, I suppose, the Ferry Festival went on. And as it got bigger, and it got too big, really, and Fred couldn't handle it no more, and that, I mean, because and that's when they built the community centre for them. But
they worked hard.
Yeah, it was hard work. Yeah, and
So
the people didn't appreciate it really. They was glad of the festival, but the people that run it, you know, they
didn't realise it was a whole year to
exactly.
organise.
Yeah. You know, it was so time consuming, especially when you was working as well. They couldn't. Fred, at the end, he said he just couldn't handle it no more. You know, it was too big. He got too big in the end, because the park used to be full of tents and fundraising and sideshows and everything in there in them days. Yeah.
Do you, for example, Colleen, because your mom was part of the committee, do you think that sometimes people in the committee feel that the local community didn't understand how much work it was to organize a festival, a year-long festival, a year-long of activities festival?
Probably not, like Dionne said. I mean, I was late teens, early 20s, from the beginning to from the 74 onwards. And you know, I know that Mum and the committee used to work hard, but I don't think as youngsters we really appreciate that. I never saw the demise of the docks being the thing. That wasn't a worry to you as a child or as a teenager. It was just being part of the fun of it. I mean, Dionne obviously for the younger bits, but I was at the age where I was beginning to go out to drink and enjoy that sort of thing and the parties. So I probably didn't realise myself at the time. But looking back, I mean, obviously they did work very, very hard. But I think they all wanted to do that. That's they you know, if you're born and bred in North Woolwich, you like a knees up, you like a party. Everybody does. I don't know anybody who didn't. So, you know, I don't think. And again, there were certain people that probably worked a little bit more than others, but everybody just mucked in and got the job done to make the day be the best it could be.
And let's have a look at the photos of the floats that I said I'd show you next. This photo. If you can recognize anybody, or you remember anything specifically from the photos I'm showing, do let me know. Or if you're watching and you were in those photos, do let us know. That is me. Actually, this photo is connected with what I wanted to talk, looking at these photos. I mean, it's very clear that money was needed to organize something like this. And what I really, really admire of the community is how the committee and the community were able to raise funds for something like this at a time when the local economy was in crisis and people were losing the job. So it was a tremendous community effort, a brilliant effort to find resources to do this when things were getting really tough. So I was going to ask, how did it happen? I think Colleen and Colin have already explained a bit how money was raised. But for example, looking at this photo and the next one, so this float was branded London Bitter. This float was a Tate and Lyle float. So so how was the involvement of big companies in the area like Tate and Lyle or other factories in donating money towards a festival?
Yeah, Tate and Lyle did donate, and time and money. The LDDC, I believe the council actually gave money. Fire Services Benevolent Fund. I can remember some of them. It's, you know, obviously I don't want to sort of not mention people because I can't remember them all at once. They're, you know, I think the British Legion, local firefighters, obviously the recorder helped promote it, but you know, as was by publicity really. But I think we gave away certain things as raffle prizes, and as local businesses did. You know, local shops, in addition to the fundraising that happened at the time. I think, what was a garage, petrol station?
Harpies, the garage, that used to throw everything, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. Obviously, the police obviously gave time and effort, and I think, you know, Alan Godfrey, who we all know from the past. I did actually dig out a little story of his about the pram race, but I know the police got involved, and obviously the church, cribs. I think I'm trying to think of people that I mentioned, printing companies.
To jog your memory, I've got this memory of standing on the sidelines and getting a baker foil, launching a box of foil into the crowd, because they were throwing some of the floats through freebies, didn't they? I remember just getting stuck in as baker foil were chucking rolls of foil off the boat.
And that I think grew over the years because they could see it was good publicity for them to be involved in a local festival, which is kind of the circle of the community helping the community. That's a Watney's. Recognise any YS at the end. So they obviously. I'm just trying to look at that's coming up towards the Henley, isn't it? The back end.
The Tates.
And Tates, as you can see, obviously.
Mr. Cube salutes the Ferry Festival.
What the school used to do, the schools used to, because obviously all the factories had their own lorries. So Tate's would have a Tate's thing, loaders, which say Baco foils, all the factories. But the schools used to go and ask local people with a lorry, can we have your lorry for this year's float? And Story often used to have the coal lorry, Burns coal lorry would clear and wash the deck for the kids to do it up and to be on. So and as you said, it was a good advertisement. They would be going around the streets with their name across the front and be photographed and put in the Newham. So it you know, everybody tried to help.
Let's go with what happened specifically on the day. And I have to say, I'm very, very happy. You're making me very happy because I can see lots of comments coming up. So do keep sending comments with your memory, your questions, because when I finish showing all of the photos and all of my questions to the members of the panel, I promise I'm going to read all of your comments and we're going to answer all of your questions. And we look forward to sharing your own memories. So keep those comments coming up. It makes me very happy to see them appearing on my interface. Let's have a look at what happened on the day of the big finale, because I think I got this a bit wrong. So this is the this is like the procession that opened the day.
Yep.
Is this correct?
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know where this photo is.
Just and that's along by the Kennard Street doctor's surgery, just before the Albert pub. That's the Albert just on the right.
Yeah, I think our photographer must have been standing on top of a building somewhere, the roof of the Henley or something, possibly.
Possibly.
With a photo lens.
Yeah, or the bridge across from the Henley, maybe.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
you're looking more to the right, aren't you? So
yeah, spot on. Yes, yeah, the railway bridge. Yeah.
Another photo of floats. And my question, let me show you all of the photos I wanted to show you for this round. I love this photo. I love the ladies. Yeah, the ladies looking at the older lady in the window. I love this photo. I also love this one. I love this one because I think we can actually see a ship in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Fernhill Street that's the rag factory on the right. And
we have another photo of these floats. Is this Factory Road?
No, that's
okay.
That's going down the back from Fernhill Street, going down towards Drew Road. What's that road called, Colin? The dock wall. So that's the dock.
That's Sheldrake. Is that the original?
Sheldrake. What it was before. Just trying to think what that was. Newland Street, I think.
Newland Street. That's the one. Newland Street. That's exactly where I live.
I think you're right.
Yes. Yeah.
So my question, because I think I got confused, so it's great that I have you here to answer my question. Is what was the event that kicked off the day? The floats and fancy dress parade, which I guess this is part of the fancy dress parade with the floats. Mm-hmm. Was this the same event that the music band procession, or was one thing first and the other later on the day?
No, they were together. The band used to start the procession, so there was always a band, a piper or something, a little bit of music, and then they would lead, and then all the floats would follow behind. Mm-hmm. And they went all round North Woolwich and Silvertown, down all the streets and everything.
And all the streets, yeah.
When you think, Colleen, how tight some of those streets are in North Woolwich.
I know, those big lorries.
Banking around the corners, that was quite a feat, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
I thought your question, Marietta, was going to be, did any of those kids fall off the float? Yeah, no.
We were pushed.
Yeah.
And this was followed. And if not, please correct me if I'm mistaken, because I'm trying to recreate what happened in the day for people in the audience who are just watching because they are friends or followers of the Thames Festival but have never heard of the festival. Or I'm trying to recreate it for people who lived in the area, and we're recreating the day together. So we had the music parade, music band, the floats, people in fancy dress, and then everybody's favorite, something that London had never seen and never saw again, the pram race, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Can I just say the contestants that were in the pram race, most of us gathered at the Henley, and then we joined the procession as it went past. And this picture that you can see here, and that's me, God, those shorts are short, on the right. as you can see, my face is covered in flame. And perhaps somebody making comments could tell us who the two gentlemen are in the chef's outfits.
Yeah,
we know,
Robbie Dyer, isn't it?
I'm giving it away now. So that's the procession with a police van. I think it's coming up to, when it's done its whole circuit, it then came past the police station and then went into the park. And that's what, we started at the pavilion, didn't we, the pram race?
Yes, yeah.
So for those who don't know, we are talking here as if everybody in the audience knew what the pram race was. For those who don't know what the very famous North Woolwich and Silvertown pram race was, who wants to explain the basics of this particular race?
How long have you got? Well,
Colin, you were a participant.
2 competitions. That obviously the winner of the pram race who got home first, because you all set off at different times and everybody was timed, and you had a number, or they knew what your name of your pram race was. And then there was a competition for the best dressed pram as well.
So it was a time trial, 2 participants per pram.
Yep.
On a fancy dress. And the race was about stopping at every pub in the neighborhood and have a drink.
And Canal Street Centre, yeah. And then
then make it to the finish line.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not joking. If you'd actually won it before, you very rarely won it again, because that one that you showed of the vicar dressed up getting the hose, that one, that's the garage. And as you went past there, if you'd won it before, you got doused so heavily that you were on the floor, or your pram was completely knackered, and people behind you just went forward and won. But obviously, like we said about all the events before, you didn't just get a pram from anywhere. You spent, some people spent months decorating it. Others, did just acquire them, and obviously the police had a team in there, and that's the little story that that's us. Yeah, that's me. That's when we won the best fancy dress pram, which was Wurzel Gummidge and Aunt Sally, because my friend Andy used to like dressing up as women, but I won't tell you anymore because he's probably watching. But that was probably when we first started taking colour pictures more than black and white for the paper. But I mean, the time that people spent on their things. I mean, there was tanks and loads of different things. It would be impossible to mention them all, but it was just.
Did Jackie make an aeroplane, Colin?
Yeah.
Was it Jackie that made the aeroplane?
That was just unbelievable. I think they made that in their spare time at Take the Lowell.
Yeah.
And some people
wood.
And some people in the audience might think, well, it wasn't that challenging. I mean, to go for a parade in a pram on a fancy dress, stop the pubs in the neighborhood. What is that? 2-3 pubs, 2-3 drinks. But how many pubs they were?
I think
the course
over the years, I think it went up and down, but I think most of the years it was 11 or 12. And you did drink at each pub. Each pub, but it stopped. And it was only supposed to be a half pint, but it wasn't a half pint. And bearing in mind, you are pushing somebody, and it was quite a long circuit, because you're going from starting off at the pavilion and virtually going right the way down to the Legion and there. And then coming all the way back through back streets, and you could get sabotaged. Is it? It's literally a few sentences, but
please.
I could never remember this, but Alan Godfrey says he was a stalwart of the festival and just loved it, and he would probably talk for hours about it. But he said each year a file about a foot thick circulated between North Woolwich Nick and Scotland Yard, detailing the procession, the extra manpower they would need, and we had to stop the buses during the pram race. But one thing that was never in print was that who was going to represent the police in the pram race. Nobody volunteered. One bloke was too fat. The other had been posted in a panda car for many years and had forgotten what his legs were for. Another claimed he had piles, and another almost went for it to take part, but then he remembered he was trying to get out of the force with a leg injury. Some said they'd been training for months in drinking a pint of beer, but looking at their stomachs, they would pass out. And he explained how the volunteer was picked for the 1983 event. We picked somebody who was not in the canteen. Big John fitted the bill. He was a former Covent Garden porter who could push a barrel full of spuds to Trafalgar Square and back. But when he found he had been lumbered, he instructed me to find him a pram. Much to my horror, I found dozens of people creeping round trying to do exactly the same thing. Mums thought twice about leaving their pram outside the shops. I tried the young mums club at St John's and was told I might find one at Queensland House. He made it went up to the lift and found to his delight a suitable old pram. This was about to be turned into what we later called the fuzz wagon. But when I got to the ground floor, I didn't have the courage to walk back to the police station in uniform, pushing a pram. The local kids would have had a field day. I tried to call up on my radio for a police van to come and meet me at the block of flats, but because of the steel work around the flats, which I think we all know lasted 20 years, I went round the flats. My radio didn't work. I went briefly to where I could get a signal, and the van was on its way. I stepped back onto the corner of the flats to await the van and found, to my acute embarrassment, some little kids had nicked the pram. But yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, even they took part, and it was just, I mean, I think in later years, they also, well, I know, because I've got pictures of me on it, they hired the ferry for us to go up to Tower Bridge, you know, that was fantastic. A disco, you were completely exhausted because you've been at the festival all day, and I think you had about half an hour to go home and perhaps get a change of clothes, and you know, so I don't think that's ever been done since, that you could hire the Woolwich ferry to go up, you know, and yeah, sorry, I rambled on there, but I thought it was it's a lovely story.
And yeah, so for obvious reasons, the East End, especially the Royal Docks, were one of the places in London with more pubs per square meter. So to do a time trial race where you have to stop at every pub and have half a drink, half a pint, which was never only half a pint. I mean, hats off to anybody who took part in the pram race and ever managed to finish the race. So yeah, I don't know if I would have been able to, but I would have loved to see it. And besides the drinking and the music and all the entertaining for the grown-ups, Dionne, what can you tell us about children activities on the day of the big finale?
So on the day in the park, we used to have the races with the kids. Once we come off the floats, we'd go into like sort of like a little mini fairground type thing, and then they'd organise kids races. There was, for the younger people, they already voted for the Ferry Festival Queen. I think there was a beauty contest. Never entered that one, by the way. But there was various like games going on, and then that progressed into watching the adults do the tug of war. If I remember, that was a really like a highlight of the day. And yeah, I think us kids just run around, and it seemed like you could have like hot dogs, and there was lovely food flying around everywhere. It seemed like a day when you was allowed to eat what you want, do what you want, be a little bit naughty, stay out a bit later. It was yeah. I can't remember the exact games we played, but I remember it was racing. I don't know, there's a beauty contest or something like that. And then for me, the highlight was the tug of war, watching the adults do the tug of war. I used to love that.
And I have to apologize. One thing that I didn't explain, and I think we didn't explain it specifically, is when this festival happened. We are talking about a lot of activities happening through the year, all leading up to a big finale, which used to take place in July. Is it correct?
Yeah.
And Colin, help me with the specific dates here. When was the first festival?
When I was an absolute child.
You're still a child.
1974, Colleen, I think.
Yes, yeah, I think 74 was the first
and
one.
it was 12 years, I think, all in all. Yeah, because the interview earlier, I think that interview earlier, and Colleen touched on it, was right, that some things do get a bit much, but when you're in an organising committee, you're always looking for more volunteers. It doesn't matter in what capacity, I don't think. And I always, when I got involved with the PTA and things like that, and we had the summer fair, I was vice chairman, another guy was chairman, and people would come along and somebody would say, oh, what can I do? And Vic, my friend, would say, no, it's all right, we don't need anything at the moment. And I then ran and grabbed the woman and said, no, we do, just get them something to do. And that lady, Kim, became a stalwart of it, never say no to volunteers, basically. And I think that sometimes if you're in the middle of it, you do think, oh, we need some more helpers. But I because I was taking part in it rather than helping to organise it. But I think it did change the way I looked at community events, because again, as Colleen said earlier, you don't realise, yes, I knew the docks were in decline because I was working for a newspaper, but I'd only started there 2 years before the festival. And yes, it was a big story, but it touched all my family and it touched the community. But you went to that festival to sort of get out of yourself, didn't you? Another day out. So that was what was great about it for me, because it was people taking part to help each other.
Before I read all of the comments that the audience have been sending this evening, my next question to all of you, and then I'll go to comments and questions for the audience. Thank you very much to all of you who are joining us live today. My next question was going to be how successful it was a festival in terms of how many people came to the area to join or to witness the festivities. But I think the next audio clip already gives us a clue. So let's have a listen.
We had a parade, pipe band and everything else like that. I don't know where they come. They come from the British Legion. British Legion have got that sorted out. Anyway, we said, we'll get 300 or 400 people. I think there was 10,000 people. In the end, the beer tent, I just ran out of beer. I had no beer. And luckily enough, it was getting a bit frustrating. We couldn't get out of the beer tent. Actually, a bloke I was in the forces with, a bloke called Roger Smith, was the Chief Inspector of Police, right? And I never knew it was the same Roger Smith. And anyway, he arrived. And I went, I was in the forces with you. He said, what's the matter, Fred? I said, look, all I want is an hour where we can go around and collect all the glasses, because we had glasses and things like that. We didn't have plastic glasses. We didn't know. We just didn't know. And he got the old lad. He said, if you're not out of this beer tent in 10 minutes, I'm going to arrest the lot of you. And he said, there's pubs, all the pubs are open all day. He said, give the lads a chance, which we did. I had no beer. Canned beer wasn't really on the go a lot then, but the bloke who had around Fundies had about 30 or 40 cases. And we just sent the blades down in cars, and they brought them back, and we just served things. And it was a blinding day, absolutely blinding. But we expected 1,000 people, but it's been estimated that there was 10,000 people there. And then it went on from there. The next year we had a 90-foot beer and it still wasn't enough.
Oh, that's
10,000 people. 10,000 people came to North Woolwich and Silvertown.
That says it all, doesn't it? It's just unbelievable. And that story about the inspector, that's actually spot on. So many people have told. Again, when it was happening, we were there, but we didn't realise what was going on. But basically, what can you say? People got an instruction from a police officer and actually followed it. Well, there's a rare thing these days, isn't it? But no, they did. They went round and they said, right, we need glasses, we need beer, and the pubs donated beer, and it was just summed it up.
And you can see in this picture that there was a crowd of people watching the parade and the pram. But I mean, we're talking about 10,000 people from all around London coming to North Woolwich and Silvertown. If the Ferry Festival wanted to put the community in the map of London, and we are alive and we are putting up a fight against everything that is happening against us. I think it was a big success. Like London took notice of North Woolwich and Silvertown thanks to the Ferry Festival.
That pram, as you called it, Marietta, that wouldn't be out of place at the event this coming weekend in the Formula Championships, wouldn't it? No. That was past pedal power. That was. It's
It's
unbelievable,
fantastic.
isn't it?
It is unbelievable. It is true, and that's. And I think, Colleen, I think you could recognize who was talking in this audio clip.
Yeah, the late great Fred Bowyer, who was Mr. North Woolwich. He did so much for the community, and he and Mickey Russell were the first two that started the idea. Yeah, great memories. He worked very hard for the community. Everybody loved Fred.
Okay, so let's have a look at the comments from the audience. And this is when I have to apologize because I couldn't wear my lenses today, so I have to get really close to the screen. And David Conroy is saying the picture of Eddie Mooney was used in his service brochure for his funeral, and I sent the booklet to the youngest sister in Canada. She was over the moon 2 years ago yesterday. I think that is a perfect example of how much the Ferry Festival meant for a lot of people in the community. It was a highlight of everybody's lives in Royal Docks. Thank you very much for sharing this with us, David. Jimbo says, leading up to the Ferry Festival, all the pubs had darts competition, pool competition, and super public, which was pool, darts, and a crib. What is a super public?
Crib is a card game. Well, it's more than a card game.
Sorry. And then he has corrected himself, saying a super pub. So a super, what, like a triathlon? Like a pub triathlon. Thank you very much, Jimbo. Jan says, I was 10 when the first Ferry Festival took place, and it was fantastic. I absolutely loved living on the island. I love when people call North Woolwich and Silvertown Island, because actually the name of our project is the Islanders. From age 1 until I was 17 in 1982. So I think, Dionne, I think this is very similar to what you were saying as a child. Jan is describing it as a fantastic thing, made the place magical. You used a beautiful word as well. You said it was like Wonderland for children.
Yeah.
Robert Rogers says, my own experience was of when the festival was reborn and held in Royal Victoria Park in 2017. I was in that one. When we had a stand for the Newham History Society, and my one-off-stage appearance as a rather fat, that's not true, Rob, you were fantastic. I was there on the day, I remember. Max Miller, still good fan. Yeah, we haven't really mentioned this much, but the festival was brought back 2-3 years ago by different community organizations and volunteers and residents. And we have to explain this again and again and again. It is not the same, and it's never going to be the same because the area has changed. We don't have the pubs. We don't have the 25 pubs. We don't have the, there's health and safety regulations. The pram race couldn't happen anymore. There are a lot of things that we can't change, and that's nobody's fault. But I have to salute the community effort in bringing back a festival. It might not be the same. It's still, some things are the same. There's still a grand finale in Royal Victoria Gardens, not last year because of COVID. There's still a beer tent. There's still a fun fair for children and sports activities. And perhaps we don't have the super pub competition in the months leading up to the big finale, but we do have a big program of arts and culture events leading up to the big finale. So perhaps a bit more of a variety of events now, combining party with culture and arts. But whatever the differences, I think what has stayed the same is that the new festival, and I know what I'm talking about because I was part of that, we brought the festival back with as a tribute to the spirit of the original Ferry Festival. A lot of people are talking now about how the area is changing because of regeneration and people moving out and new people coming in. And there were a lot of talk about we are losing the community spirit. And just as in the 70s and the 80s, people launched the Ferry Festival to demonstrate that the community was still alive. We brought back the festival 2, 3, 4 years ago, 2017, to demonstrate that despite all of the changes and new people like me coming to the area, there is an amazing community spirit in North Woolwich and Silvertown. So, and it's a very inclusive community, because people like me have been made fun. I felt this was my community as well, and I have enjoyed every second of everything we have done. So big kiss to everybody who is nowadays part of the community. I shouldn't have.
You got any photos, Marietta?
No, for tonight, but I will ping some photos as comments.
Because dinosaurs.
But Marietta, the word on the street when you came to the area that you were a breath of fresh air. So that was what the locals were saying. So you did encourage people to bring back a lot of our history. So, you know, thanks to people like you coming into the area, it all gets revived again. Thank you.
It is, as you said, it's not the same. It's going to be different, and it is different in a lot of very good ways. And it is bringing people together. And you know, these things take time to grow. You know, because of the different kind of makeup in the community, and I don't think anybody organising anything new should get downhearted. And you know, we all know we've had things for the Heritage Month where one year only 4 people turned up, and the next year, you know, 100 turned up, and that's how these things grow. And you try ways of marketing it, but you know, I still think things like that, the best way of marketing is to stick a bloody great banner up on the park, you know. So, but that's what you have to get the council to do. You know, it'd also be nice if the council cleaned the park up the day before rather than leaving it to all the volunteers to do. But you know, but it is different, and it will grow and hopefully be.
And a spoiler alert, after a year of absence when we had to move everything online because of COVID, we are working really hard to bring back the festival this year, not during the summer because situation is still complicated this summer, but probably September, October. So watch this space. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link to the Ferry Festival Facebook page as a comment under this video after the live, and I'm going to ask all of you to stay tuned and keep an eye on notifications. And also for all of you who have not seen anything of the new festival, if you go to the new Facebook page of the Ferry Festival, you may see some of the photos of the dinosaurs that came to visit North Woolwich in 2018. That was fantastic. Yeah, go look for the dinosaurs photos. It was fantastic. David says, oh, that's a very good point from David. It was really tough after the Super Pub event, pool, darts and cabbage, because you had to get up at work on Monday. And I was wondering what cabbage mean.
I think he means cribbage.
He meant cribbage, yeah.
Yeah, predictive text. Thanks, Dave.
A question from Joy. We might have touched this already, but perhaps Colin can clarify a bit more. Did the council help support the Ferry Festival?
I'm not sure if financially, if they did. I don't know. I can't say yes or no, but I think the fact that we had to do so much fundraising, I'm guessing that we had to pay for the use of the park, or I don't know.
Yeah, in the list that I did when I wrote the piece, which is I think 4 or 5 years ago now, the London Docklands Development Corporation, which was the body that started up to regenerate the area, and the council were listed in those that gave support, and I got that list from one of the programs. So it might have been that they, whatever you might have had to pay to hire the park, they gave that free. So that's helping finance it, I'm sure they helped too.
And Joy, who is also a member of the. Sorry, Dionne, go.
Sorry, they didn't get like big grants or anything, Colin, did they? Like like now if events go on and they get funded, it wasn't like massive funding and stuff like that, was there? That wasn't about it in those days, really, was it? Sorry, Marietta.
No, that's fine. Thank you for adding that. Joey, who is actually a member of the current committee of the new Ferry Festival, says Tate and Lyle still support the resurrected Ferry Festival, past, present, and future, and so do London City Airport. So, yeah, that's something that we have to mention, that local businesses keep supporting the new Ferry Festival.
Sorry, could I just add about the airport? One of the things that they brought into the area was their own festival, which, because people had been telling them and banging on for ages about how good the Ferry Festival was. So when they moved into the area, they wanted to know what things they could do. Well, obviously the first thing people said was give us some double glazing to keep the noise out. But after that, it was, what kind of things can we do? So they had their own fun day. Which amazingly the first few years was actually in the airport on a day that the airport wasn't operating, and you could just walk around freely, very little security, which these days would just be incredible. And then they moved it to Thames Barrier Park one year, so that was their way of kind of providing something again for the community. But and obviously they had, they could obviously offer prizes like free flights to places. And anyway, it's just, that was another thing where people were telling them what they used to have in the past. And I can't remember how many years that went for, probably 8 or 9, if memory serves me right.
And Joey
they
said,
provided the raffle ticket prizes in the last, the indoor Ferry Festival that we had to have inside St John's, because I won the
day, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a great day. But I won a raffle prize, and that was sponsored by London City Airport, £100 for Westfield. So they give quite a bit to the prize, the raffle prizes as well.
wow. And Joey Newton says, wouldn't Tate and Watney's have supplied their own lorry and floats? I mean, we did see, I don't know if it was supplied by Tate or funded by Tate, but we did see a photo earlier on of a float with Tate and Lyle branding. Remind me, guys, what was Watney's?
That's a brand of beer. Brewing company. Yeah.
And yes, all the local factories had their own float, their own lorries. So Loaders would have had one, Baco Foil, Tate's, Watney's.
Yeah, the breweries had their own delivery lorry, so they simply took part of the bits off, and that was the thing that the kids stood on, and that's what we've had in Romford years ago with Hind Coop, I think, the brewery then.
Thank you very much for answering Joey's question. And Joey, thank you very much for your question, and of course for being with us this evening. David Conroy, I think that the Ferry Festival queen in that picture is Sharon Wright, who lived in Claremont Close. Eddie was her mum. So David is talking about one of the floats, one of the pictures of the floats that we showed earlier with the queen of the festival. Thank you, David, for that comment, because I did ask if you can recognize anybody, let us know. This thing about somebody being crowned queen of the festival, was this, who was the queen of the festival? Was it like a contest, a beauty contest, or games contest? Or how was the queen chosen or crowned?
Judging panel, I presume. I don't know exactly. I mean, Newham Town Show had Miss Newham, which later became Carnival Queen, because they never used to have a procession, and then they saw how good it works for the Ferry Festival, so they nicked the idea, and instead of calling it a procession, they called it a Carnival procession. And then Miss Newham, because attitudes changed to it being a beauty contest, and it became Carnival Queen, and they went around representing the area, that everything from, I don't know, council events to opening of bingo halls and stuff like that. So I don't know what things the Carnival Queen did for the Ferry Festival, but I'm guessing it probably was the committee that chose it. Was it, Colleen, I think?
Again, I don't know. Presumably in the park, because they had the baby competition, fancy dress competition, the Ferry Festival Queen. So probably there was a committee maybe made up of, I don't know. from the committee members, or I don't know, other people.
And I've got a very good question from Joy. And I think this is a question not only for Colleen and Dionne and Colin Grainger, who are live on the panel now. This video is going to stay on the Thames Festival Facebook page and YouTube, if you're watching us from the YouTube channel. And you can still comment. You can re-watch the video and you can still comment after the live. So this question is for all of you watching, or anybody who has a connection with the area. So please do answer this question after the live. Leave your comment, because we want to know answers to this question, which is which elements would you want to see brought back to the modern Ferry Festival, past, present and future? Any ideas off the top of your head? For example, Colin, you were laughing when you saw the question, and then Dionne.
I would say cranberries. But you wouldn't have to. Yeah, we've only got 1 or 2 pubs to stop at the moment, but you wouldn't necessarily have to do. We could have
pop-up pubs. We could have pop-up like Husk Brewery, Brewdog. We could have invite all the little breweries in.
Yeah, they could have a table out in the street somewhere, couldn't they?
Exactly. I'll chuck in a couple of Lambrinis for you, no problem.
Actually, that is a very good idea.
We could stop at Dionne.
Yeah.
We could stop at Dionne's house.
Yeah, I mean, pop-up pubs to recreate the rich history and heritage of the area, where we used to have a pub in every corner. So to do something like that, to recreate, I like that idea. Yeah.
Listen, guys, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to go.
Yeah.
Because I've got a bit. I thought we were finishing at 8. So can I please leave the room?
Of course. Actually, it's my fault. I love talking to you guys, so I always go longer than I should. So I think
it's so lovely, but I need to go. I need to be somewhere. So
we were about to wrap it up anyway. Dionne, thank you very much. Let me show this comment that I think summarizes how much we have enjoyed this evening. Dionne, you can leave. That's absolutely fine. Thank you very much. Alex Clemente says, thank you so much for such an informative and entertaining event. I'm going to say what I say every time we do an event like this. Every time I prepare these events, I think, okay, I already know everything about this topic. And then the more I talk to all of you guys, the more I continue discovering stories about the rich history of the Royal Dog. So I completely agree with Alex, and that's thank you to Colleen, and Dionne. I have a last question for Colleen and Colin, who are with us now. With this photo, for example, let me remove Alex's comment. And with this photo, I've got a last final question. You can see on this float that it says, Docklands yours or theirs. Colin and Colleen, if this festival was the community response to the troubles, the struggles, the suffering of the times when the docks were closing and something was needed to lift the community spirit, was the festival successful? Did it really help the community?
It certainly did, yes, yeah. A big yes.
No question, yeah. Yeah.
And actually, even from that, when the pubs did start to close and there were fewer pubs, that was when the same committee said, right, we need to have a community sense, a community, and the Canal Street Community Hall, because we had St John's Community Centre, but they wanted somewhere where you could get.
Chris Sheldrake, who was
that was another thing I was going to say.
Yeah, he died in a horrible motorcycle accident. Part of the reason that apart from me finding some of the recorders archives, probably wouldn't happen now, but each year Chris would say to me, can we have some copies of the pictures you used? And my boss at the time, Tom, didn't really want us to do photo orders. Don't know why, because when we started doing them in later years, we made quite a lot of money. So each year I would give Chris the negatives, and he'd he would literally go over to the nearest Happy Snaps shop and get them developed into pictures. And I used to say to him the following year, "Did you ever give us those negatives back?" And he'd say, "Yeah, I'm sure we did." Yeah. He didn't actually, and his wife gave some of them to Brian Cook. And then I've now got them back for the recorder files, which don't exist anymore, so they're in my house. But that's how we started using those pictures.
Right.
As part of the history, and everybody wanted copies, but it's the pictures that we didn't have time to use that, and that's probably a bit of Chris's legacy. I mean, he did a lot more. He wrote a program, didn't he, each year, and he was lovely.
Well, he always, and I think that's what a lot of people, they only thought it was the Saturday, but actually the Sunday featured. It was a weekend, because on the Sunday morning, people would go to clear the beer tent, clear the pub, but Chris always did a service in the park. And one of the things I can remember him saying to me was, "Oh, Colin, I have more congregation on this this day than I do on any other day of the Sunday."
Yeah, mind you, I think he did used to say to me, "I don't think all of them are quite there." Probably still a bit hungover from the night.
Something.
They're probably praying for their headaches to go. Yeah. And then, sorry, I completely forgot that as well.
Because they did the little service, and then people would go and have Sunday afternoon little street parties. So it actually did fall over on to be.
Sorry, we didn't mention the street parties, did we? Because they were
that could be another time, Colin.
I mean, we were always only going to talk about some memories of the festival, because we would need a whole weekend, the three of us here, talking about everything that happened at the Ferry Festival. Colleen, Dionne, who was with us earlier, thank you so very much for joining me this evening. I think this is a beautiful way of putting an end to tonight's event, that we were talking about a real legacy for the community after and thanks to the Ferry Festival. Us from the Islanders Project on the Thames Festival page, we are going to take a bit of a summer break, but we're going to be back on, I believe it's September the 20th. So no, there won't be an online event in August, but we'll be back on the 20th of September to talk about the 1950s floods. And I might have to invite Colin back to the panel, because I think he wrote a really, really well-researched and fascinated article about it. So, Colin, I will definitely see you again. Colleen, thank you very much for being with us this evening. And for all of you who joined a bit late today, I'm going to wrap it up with the music video. Good evening.
Do you remember the Ferry Festival?
Yes, we used to have the Ferry. Fred actually used to run it. He was sort of the main instigator from there, and we used to have raffles and that, and really good laughs with the pram race, because I remember once I was in the pram race with a woman round the corner, and I said, "We haven't got I can get a pram." She said, "You push me." Well, because all right, well, the wheels fell off this pram. I don't know where she got it. We never even finished the course. We never got to the police station, and we were sitting there watching. But as the police that was in it, because there was a special route where you had to go up, cross the zebra crossings. Well, the police had their own zebra crossing, didn't they? Rolled up. And of course, they're halfway up, because you used to go into every pub and have half a beer. Well, imagine in them days there was 20 pubs in Woolwich.